There's something happening in Arizona right now, and most people living there don't even realize it. Not because it's hidden, not because it's small, but because it's happening. Slowly. So slowly, that by the time you notice it, it's already too late to stop. The ground is sinking. And not in some distant, isolated area nobody cares about. This is happening across parts of Arizona. But one place in particular has started to stand out. A region just over an hour east of Tucson. Quiet. Agricultural. Not the kind of place that makes headlines. The Wilcox Basin. At first, nothing seems wrong. You drive through it. You see farms. Open land. Everything looks normal. But then, you start noticing things that don't make sense. Cracks in the ground, not small ones either. Long, deep fissures. Stretching across the land like something underneath is pulling it apart. Roads that don't sit evenly anymore. Areas that flood, even when it barely rains. Wells that used to provide water, suddenly running dry. Individually, these things might not seem connected, but they are. And once you understand what's actually causing it, you realize this isn't just a local problem. It's structural, because what's happening here isn't just on the surface. It's coming from deep underground. For decades, this region has depended on groundwater, not rivers, not rainfall, groundwater. Water that sits beneath the surface, stored in layers of sediment, acting like a hidden reservoir. And for a long time, it seemed like there was plenty of it. So farms grew, operations expanded, and more importantly, the pumping never really stopped. Because here's the part nobody paid attention to. There were no real restrictions, no strict limits, no system forcing people to slow down. So the water kept getting pulled out, faster than it could ever be replaced. And that's where the real problem starts. Because groundwater doesn't just sit there, it does something. It holds the ground up. Deep below the surface, there are tiny spaces between sediment particles. Normally, those spaces are filled with water. And that water creates pressure, a kind of invisible support system, keeping everything above it stable. But when that water disappears, those spaces don't stay open. They collapse, slowly, quietly, layer by layer. The ground compacts. And when that happens, everything above it starts to sink. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just gradually. But here's the part that makes this different from most problems. It's permanent. Once those underground layers collapse, they don't go back. Even if water comes back later, the space that used to hold it is gone forever, which means the land doesn't just lose height, it loses its ability to store water. And in a place like Arizona, that's a serious problem. Because this isn't happening at a slow, harmless rate. In some parts of the Wilcox Basin, the ground has been sinking up to 6 inches per year. That might not sound like much at first, but over time, it adds up. Nearly 3 feet in just a few years. up to 12 feet in some areas since the 1950s. Think about that. The ground beneath entire sections of land, dropping by the height of a person, and most of it happening without people fully noticing it in real time. But the signs are starting to show. Those fissures, they're not random. They form when different parts of the ground sink at different rates, tearing the surface apart. The flooding, that's because the land isn't level anymore. Water collects where it shouldn't. And the wells? They're not just drying up. They're chasing a moving target. Because the deeper the water drops, the harder it becomes to reach. And here's where things get even more complicated. There was a moment when people thought it might slow down. A rare period of heavy rain, snowpack building up in the mountains, more water than usual entering the system. For a second, it looked like things might stabilize. But it didn't last. Because right after that, the heat came back, the dryness returned, and whatever small recovery happened was wiped out. The sinking slowed, briefly, but it didn't stop. And that's when it became clear. This isn't something that fixes itself. It has to be controlled. Which brings us to the only real solution being discussed: regulation. In Arizona, there's a system designed specifically for this. It's called an active management area. Basically, it puts limits on how much groundwater can be used, forces monitoring, forces planning, and in other parts of the state, it's worked. Cities like Phoenix and Tucson have seen groundwater levels stabilize, even recover. Subsidence in some areas has completely stopped. But the Wilcox Basin, it's late. Not too late to slow things down, but too late to undo what's already happened. Because the damage underground is already locked in, and that changes everything. Because now, this isn't just about stopping the problem. It's about managing something that can't fully be reversed. And that's a much harder situation to deal with. Because even if pumping slows down, even if water levels improve slightly, the land will never go back to what it was. The storage capacity, the structure, the stability, some of it is gone. For good. And that's the part nobody really talks about. Not the cracks, not the sinking, not even the water, but the fact that this process, once it reaches a certain point, doesn't reset. It just continues. At a slower pace maybe, but it keeps going. And that raises a bigger question. If this can happen here, in one basin, under conditions that exist in a lot of places across the Southwest, then how many other areas are already heading in the same direction and just haven't reached the point where people notice yet? If you made it this far, hit like and subscribe and let me know. Does this feel like something people should be paying more attention to? Or is it one of those problems that's just too slow to care about until it's serious? Because the ground doesn't just sink overnight. It sinks quietly, and by the time it becomes obvious, it's already changed everything.